Ready? We are on the air. Everybody turn off their cell phones, please. Okay. Good morning and welcome to the December 10th, 2019 Historic Site Preservation Board monthly meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Member Rosenau? Here. Member Nelson is not here. Member Kaiser?
Here.
Member Dixon?
Present.
Member Lavoie is not here.
Coming
Member
in.
Huff?
Yes.
And Chair Burkett.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Excuse me. May we have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Mr. Chair, the agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of the council chamber and at the Planning Department counter on Thursday, December 5th in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the board have any revisions to the agenda? I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Burkett and a second by Member Dixon. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chair, may we recognize that Member Lavoie has joined the meeting.
Thank you. We will now move to public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter of jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the hearing, and we have one today. Do we have anyone wishing to address the board today on non-public hearing items? Seeing none, no further speakers, we will move to the consent calendar. Item 1A, approval of the minutes, November 12, 2019 HSPB meeting. Board, does anyone have any changes to the November 12th minutes?
Move to approve as presented.
Good. I have a first.
I'll second.
And a second. A first by Member Dixon and a second by Member Huff. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So let's proceed on to, good morning, to public hearings. This is item 2A. It's an application by J.R. Roberts, owner for Class 1 Historic Site, historic designation of the Lawrence Welk residence located at 730 Paseo El Mirador. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted in your staff report, the property owner is requesting the historic resource designation of a single-family residence that was owned by the famous band leader and entertainer and TV personality Lawrence Welk. Let me pull up the PowerPoint here for you a moment. The design and construction of the home is also attributed to the well-known local builder Joseph S. Pauling, who's credited with having built approximately 400 homes in and around Palm Springs during the 50s and 60s. The architectural style of the home is a modern interpretation of the rambling Western ranch-style home popularized by architect Cliff May in the 30s. As you review your staff report, on page 2 there's an aerial photo of the home, which you can see is in an open Y shape that is oriented toward the mountains toward the southwest. On page 3 of your staff report begins the staff's analysis of the property against the criteria in your ordinance. The most significant feature or aspect of this home is its association with Lawrence Welk. Lawrence Welk owned the home from, bear with me, I want to just catch these slides up. This is an aerial of the neighborhood in El Mirador where the home is located. These are photos of the home at about the time that Welk purchased it, and then a more recent photo. So Welk owned the home from 61 until 72, which was during the period of time that he was most nationally prominent. His TV variety show had run from 1955 through 1971 and was one of the most widely syndicated television shows of its type. So reviewing the home in pages 3 and 4 of your staff report and on page 5, The home is associated with a person of significance, Lawrence Welk, who made a contribution at a national level. It also reflects the period of local history post-World War II, when the modern style of architecture was embraced by both business owners, homeowners, and even civic buildings as a style that was popularized and has become almost our trademark here in Palm Springs. And it also presents the work of a master builder whose genius influenced his age, builder Joseph Pauling. The analysis of integrity in your staff report begins on page 5, and all the aspects of integrity, the 7 aspects, those being location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association, are found in this home. And we believe the home has a high, a high degree of integrity. On page 6 of your staff report and 7 are the listing of our recommendations for the defining characteristics of the home and those items that are non-contributing. That concludes my staff report. The author of the report, Melissa Ritchie, is in the audience and is here to represent the owner, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, Board, are there any questions of staff?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Boyd.
I'll try to talk this morning. We seem to be suffering from the
We
same
are.
thing. I don't disagree with the important parts of the report, but what I can't agree with is identifying this as a California ranch house in the style of Cliff May. Could you please clarify how you got to that conclusion?
I'm going to let the applicant explain that.
Good, thank you.
Wait, I'm sorry. They'll call up when they open the public hearing. They're going to do questions of staff first. I'm sorry. Apologize for that.
False alarm, sorry. Okay, any other questions of staff? Seeing no further questions of staff, I'll open the public hearing as the applicant present. Yes, now you can come up.
Melissa Ritchie.
Please,
Wait.
please sign in, come to the table, speak into the mic, and give your name and you address and tell us about your project.
Okay, my name is Melissa Ritchie. I was asked to author this report on behalf of the owner, J.R. Roberts, in reviewing the design of the house and looking at the book about Cliff May ranch houses that was actually republished by Sunset Magazine a couple of decades ago now. It was quite clear that the ranch style that was designed by Joseph Pauling copied one of the designs that Cliff May had introduced, and in fact there was a page in the book that said something like expanding the house to embrace the views, and the actual layout of the house was almost identical to the form that Joe Pauling used in the early 50s in this particular house. And he actually reproduced that same style of house in we discovered at least probably 10 other houses in and around that neighborhood that all had this kind of fan shape, low ranch style. The only aspect that wasn't the same was that he didn't create a porch per se, which Cliff May would have included, but the actual shape, this kind of fanned out 2 wings with a central living core separating the 2 wings, was very much a style that Cliff May had introduced.
I would agree that the floor plan emulates the work of Cliff May, but the style of the house in no way emulates or copies or would be construed to be a California ranch house. It is more modernist in its architectural expression. Mm-hmm. And
I think my view was it was a modern style ranch. I hoped I made that clear in the report, that it was more about the style of the floor plan rather than it being a Western ranch. So it was I think I called it a modern ranch, and that was really my interpretation of what this style of house was.
I guess I would continue to disagree.
Okay. Any other questions of staff or the applicant while she's here? Okay. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Ms. We may be
thank you.
calling you back
All right.
up in just a few moments. So is there anyone else wishing to speak on this public hearing item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. The action is now with the board. So board, your comments and questions, please. Any-
I find both the report and the historical document both satisfactory for the nomination. However, I do have issues with characterizing this as a Cliff May ranch house. It is, to me, very much a modernist expression. I would, if there are no other comments, I would make a motion to accept the report and forward this on to the city council for designation. With the opine, as it's recorded, that Board Member Lavoy has reservations about identifying this as a Cliff May ranch house.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion made by Mr. Lavoy and a second by Ms. Dixon. Any further discussion by members? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chair, could you adjust your microphone so it's a little bit closer to your...
Sure. Okay, the next item is unfinished business, and we have none today, so we'll move into new business, which is item 4A. Daniel Friedman and Robert Dalglish, owners, requesting approval to demolish a Class 4 historic site located at 302 West Vereda Norte. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicants and owners are requesting approval to demolish this single-family residence located at 302 West Vereda Norte. In accordance with the municipal code, the structure was constructed in 1959. It has not been identified as potentially significant on the citywide survey, and thus, by nature of its age, it is defined as a Class 4 historic site. Class 4 historic sites are processed as we are doing today, in which it is a decision that comes before the board to consider whether or not to initiate proceedings to designate it to a higher level of historic designation, or to take no action and allow the home to be demolished. The analysis in your staff report, excuse me, begins on page 3. The home was originally owned by a Mr. Lloyd Gilligan, who was apparently a local contractor and liquor store owner. There was no other information that the applicant had found or provided with respect to Mr. Gilligan or the subsequent owners that would qualify the home as having any association with persons of significance or those who had contributed at a meaningful level at the local, state, or national level. In terms of its construction and its period, it is a conventional frame and stucco home with a flat roof with no distinguishing historic or architectural features. And there was nothing else that was noted that was particularly important from the respect of the criterion 3 or 4 in terms of reflecting a period in history or its method of construction. The applicant did not indicate any architect or builder who was associated with the home other than what you see in the attached building permit records that are attached to your staff report. The analysis under, I'm sorry, excuse me. The analysis on page 4 is the analysis of integrity, and of course it does remain on its original lot. There are no distinguishing design features in the opinion of the staff. One permit was relating to an addition that was a 100 square foot addition of a closet in addition to the original building permit. The design remains essentially unaltered. The home remains on the lot in which it was built, so the issue of the setting is there. Material construction is of conventional wood frame construcco, as I previously mentioned. And the workmanship does not exhibit any particularly noteworthy quality. and there was no association that was known other than with the home's first owner, Lloyd Gilligan, who was not deemed to be a person of significance. Our conclusion, Mr. Chair and Board, in reviewing this application is it does not possess sufficient historic significance to warrant reclassification as a Class 1 or Class 2 historic site, and we're recommending that the Board take no action and allow the applicant to proceed with the demolition of the structure. That concludes my staff report, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Board, are there questions of staff?
I just did have a comment.
Okay, please.
I feel there are no redeeming qualities to this house at all, but I did want to mention that Jeannie Levitt, who lived there, just for knowledge, was from the family, you know, the Levitt-town family of the Track Home development. Was that in Pennsylvania or Long Island? So anyway, I just thought that was interesting that Jeannie Levitt from Levitt-town lived in this crummy little house. So just a fun comment.
Okay. Right. Okay.
I didn't think it was so crummy and little. No, it's not little, that's for sure.
Right. Okay, so the action is with the board. Any other comments from the board about the house? Board, I'd like to, may I have a motion to accept the recommendation by staff to allow the demolition?
So moved. I always hate to see old homes go down, and I realize it has no significant value, and there's no reason to retain the property, but personally, I always hate to see them go down.
Yeah.
But move
I
to
agree.
approve.
Yeah.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Member Dixon and a second by Member Hupp, right? Is there any further discussion, board? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries 6-0. The next item is 4B. Daniel Krog and Adam Bonet, owners, requesting Class 1 historic resource designation for the Shea residence located at 1690 Ridgemore Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The recommendation in your staff report, this is a recent application that's been received, so we are providing you the Historic Resources report today and recommending that you accept the report and direct staff to arrange site visits and to schedule a public hearing to consider the application.
Board, any other questions? Okay. May I have a motion to accept the Historic Resources report and schedule site visits?
Comments, Mr. Chair.
Pardon?
Comments first, please.
Okay. Do we have a second?
No, he said comments.
Comments.
Oh, comments. Oh, I'm sorry.
On page 24, one of, I think at the top of the list should always be what style the building is as a character-defining feature. Otherwise, it's a fairly comprehensive report. Thank you. So I'll make a motion to accept the report.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Member Lavoy and a second by Member Dixon. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries 6-0. The next item on our agenda is number 5 under discussions, 5A, symposium. And I guess that would be me. I'd like to give you some update to the symposium. First of all, the tours. We've added a very interesting one, which is the Cody Restoration up in Southridge by Michael Johnson, which is sponsored by Palm Springs Modern Committee. And the second one is the Bishop House / Willows, the two together, which will be sponsored by the Palm Springs Historical Society with Tracy Conrad. And that's in addition to the Randolph Scott residence and the Movie Colony, Taquas Canyon Macy residence by the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation, and the Architectural and Design Museum. I should know something from them within the next week. We have a couple of new additions to the program that I'd like to share with you. In addition to the tour of the Cody in Southridge, the owner, Michael Johnson, will be doing a presentation, which is again sponsored via the Palm Springs Modern Committee. I am delighted to report that I received a confirmation via J.R. Roberts that Peter Wilson of Gensler from Los Angeles has accepted our invitation to present the restoration plans, and he will be joining JR at the theater, which will be the last part of our event. So having seen Mr. Wilson before and his enthusiasm and excitement for the plan, and the whole idea is for him to review the challenges that they have before them with the theater and the restoration. So I think it's going to be a great way to end our event on the second day. Also, Tracy Conrad has asked to substitute for her smoke tree presentation one doing the Bishop House and the Willows, which does follow suit with the tours, and I think that's going to be another very enlightening and interesting one as well. So you can really see, when you see this program unfolding, that there is a major interest on focus on restoration, renovation, and rehabilitation. Thank you, Mr. Lavoie and Ms. Dixon, for your comments from last year. We took you to heart, and we're going to make that happen. It's very good. And that is the end of my report. We'll be having another subcommittee meeting in probably the next few weeks. And we're now honing in, and now we'll be getting into the nitty-gritties of making this all happen. Okay, thank you very much. Board, any other, I'm sorry. I guess we move right along here to board comments. Nothing?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lavoie.
I guess I'm going to confirm the rumors. I have moved out of Palm Springs and will be resigning this position as advised by the city clerk. It's been a rewarding experience, both for me to adjust to a different set of rules and a different custom. It's been beneficial to both Santa Barbara and Palm Springs. I've exchanged information back and forth. And I'll leave you with something that I was told when in a heated discussion about the removal of a garden that had existed for 200 years. And I wanted to keep the garden, and I was told by someone with even more authority than mine that it's about period of significance. It's not, and the city historian looked at me and said, all of history isn't pretty. We're not here to preserve what's pretty. We're here to preserve the story. And some of the story isn't pretty. So be very careful when you evaluate a building or a report, not look at it from our current point of view of what we think is pretty or acceptable, but try to place yourself in the period of significance and evaluate the building's worth, either from that point of view. Was that style appropriate then? Many Victorians, which we hated for so many years, all of a sudden became historic, and we started appreciating them. but they were all torn down in the 40s, most of them, because we thought they were ugly. But they were historic. So evaluate something on its history, on what story it can bring to us, and tell future generations whether we like the building or not. And thank you all for your support and your encouragement and your friendship and camaraderie. Thank you.
If I may address you as Bill this time.
Yes.
Those comments that you just made are ones that we're going to be missing on this board without you, I got to tell you. Your insight, your perspective on things has opened all of our eyes. And then when you add to the mix your background in architecture and preservation, your knowledge, it's just been invaluable to the board. And to be honest, I can't imagine what it's going to be like sitting here, not having you to my left. It's been an amazing journey, but what I am happy to report to the board is didn't even have to twist his arm, that he has agreed to even though he's leaving the board, that he will be participating in the annual event on his presentation on the tramway. So we're not really losing him altogether. But we really are going to miss you. It's just been an amazing experience, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I've grown a lot listening to you as well, so I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Dixon.
not knowing that was coming, I want to say you are a wealth of information, and you have been just an ideal board member to serve with. You have brought so much information and knowledge to me that I truly appreciate. And much like Dick just said, I can't imagine you not being here. Those are big shoes someone's going to have to fill, and I hope we find someone that's just partially as qualified as you were. You will be missed.
I'm almost speechless at this point. I do have one other comment. I would like to ask staff if we could add the Arthur Elrod's house at 350 West Villalobos to the Class 3 potential list. I was surprised to find that it's not been designated, and it is not on the survey, and the house is up for sale. So I would like to ask that you please consider this to be added.
We will look into it, and we'll approach it as we had discussed earlier, using the DPR forms.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other board comments? Seeing none, staff comments, please.
Just following on Board Member Lavoie's comments again, we as staff would also like to thank you for your service and for the ways that you've educated us in the field of preservation. We will definitely miss your experience, both as an architect and as a preservationist, and being able to steal things from Santa Barbara. So we do appreciate what you've done here with the Preservation Board. Following up with that, we anticipate that City Council will fill the position at some point in January. I don't know that it will be in time for our January meeting, however, but we'll keep you updated on that process. And again, thank you again, Mr. Lavoie. We appreciate it. One other comment I have for you before I'll turn it over to Mr. Lyon is that Margot Wheeler, our former planning director, is in the process of putting together a potential tour to the city of Phoenix. What she has arranged is taking a tour of the new Arrive Hotel, which is under construction there, and involves the reuse of existing office buildings, I believe vintage 1950 office buildings, retaining their architectural characteristics, but turning them into a hotel. The hotel will be going through a soft opening in January, and she has arranged for the board members, if you choose to go on this tour, to stay there, I believe, free of charge. Also, she is putting together a tour with members of the Phoenix preservation community to see some of the buildings and structures that have either been restored or are part of the tours that they do there locally. What she is looking at is potentially the dates of either the weekend of January the 18th or January the 25th. So I'd like to ask, is there interest in doing this as the Historic Site Preservation Board, and would either of those dates work for you in terms of your schedule?
Is it leave on Friday, come back? I mean, what are the parameters?
Yes, it would be.
Are we driving? Are we getting a bus?
Yeah, you would need to get yourselves there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't provide that for
Okay.
you. But it would be essentially a 2-day trip, so that you would go on the morning of Friday, stay overnight, and then come back late on the day and Saturday after you've had your tour. So those would be the parameters. If you'd like, I can send out a follow-up email and have you respond by email. That way you can
Okay.
check your calendars and see
Perfect.
your availability.
The only possible conflict is the weekend of the 25th is the museum gala. And that's a big event. So
Okay.
it's on the 25th.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. So I will follow up with an email then and see if we can coordinate that for you. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lyon.
Thank you, Director Fagg. I want to also thank Member Lavoie for your service on the board and also for helping to keep me straight and narrow on all these various topics and materials that come before you. So thank you for your service. It's been a pleasure. I want to give you a brief update on a few things. How many of the board members here were able to attend the city attorney's workshop on ethics? Almost all of you. Great. One thing I want to just highlight from that, there was a discussion in that about when is it appropriate for members of boards and commissions to come before the city council on matters that actually make their way up to a final decision that is a city council decision. And if you were there and you recall, the discussion was that once a board or commission has taken an action, the action of the board is then represented in that staff report and in the action that you have taken. So when you take a Class 1 historic site application, for example, and make a recommendation to City Council for Class 1 designation, your recommendation, both as an individual board member and as the board, has been represented. And so on those kinds of matters, it would not be necessarily appropriate for board members to come up to those City Council meetings and speak individually, because the recommendation has already been carried forward. On matters that, of course, are not items that have already been brought forward through a recommendation of an action of the board, you're certainly, of course, welcome to participate in those city council meetings and speak at public comment on anything that you would feel appropriate to do so. But I just wanted to highlight that particular item. On some other items, on some updates, the mundane, we have some updates coming on the orange and blue brochures, the one about historic districts and historic sites. And there was a request at the last one of the last board meetings to pull together some type of a frequently asked questions brochure for realtors that they could hand out to their clients that would help understand preservation matters. And so we're going to be working on that in the coming months. On the Wellwood Murray Memorial Library, the project that was reviewed by the board for the courtyard, which was the final phase of the library update, is going forward into bidding at this time. So they don't have bids received yet, but they have had a number of contractors express interest and request the documents. So as that moves forward, I'll keep you informed. On the Cornelia White residence, the project is essentially complete. The city has accepted the project from the contractor. The last material work that was done at the property was the addition of some additional landscape. When the project was reviewed with the member of the city council, member J.R. Roberts, who was the contact person on the council level for the project, it was determined that there really was a need for a little bit more landscaping. So I believe that they're working on that, and the home has been turned back over to the Historical Society, who will be getting their exhibits replaced or placed back into the home. And I believe they're having a rededication sometime in the coming months. I do not have the exact date for that, but when it's known, I'll share it with you. Excuse me. Sorry. I want to, excuse me. I want to then just give you a brief update on your work program that you accepted back in the summer. We're about midway through the fiscal year. I'm very sorry, I'm fighting allergies like crazy. We are working to put out requests for proposals for historic resources reports on the top set of priorities that the board had identified. Those priorities that you had listed, which were the top 6, was the Las Palmas Liquors building at the corner of Vistachino and Palm Canyon, property known as the Araby Adobe, the Araby Rock Houses, Caraccia Pension, the Gas Company building, and the Union Bank of California building. And then lastly, there was a request from the board a month or so ago to bring forward the board's recommendation to the City Council on the Palm Springs Racquet Club. And as you know, that the recommendation and the analysis that you had at the time was based on a 2004 Historic Resources survey that was provided by the John Ash Group. In order to make sure that we're looking at the current set of conditions on the site, we're going to be requesting a proposal for a consultant to provide a limited update reviewing the condition of the facility as it exists today against our new ordinance. The last time it was considered by this board, it was reviewed under the old ordinance and with a resources report that was back when the property was in a significantly different condition than it is today. So that will be a piece of work that we're also seeking proposals on. And I believe that concludes the comments that I have. Thank you.
Mr. Lyon, do you have the report on the status of where we are with them?
I beg your pardon. Thank you for reminding me on that. Chair Burkett had asked me to provide an update on some of the recent applications and projects that you have forwarded to the council. And so let me give you a brief update on where things stand. Inspiration Point is a project that will be going to the City Council on the 19th of December at a public hearing. The next 2 that will go will be the Kramer residence and the Kirk Douglas residence, which we're expecting to go in January, probably at the first or second meeting. The next ones after that will be Desert Holly and Marino Manor, the historic district applications that you made recommendations on. Those will go either the second week of January or into the first week of the first week of February. And I qualify these dates. The reason that I'm giving them to you as tentative is that these agendas at the city council level are established by the city clerk and the city manager. And sometimes business that has a more pressing nature does need to take precedence over some of the HSPB recommendations. But these are the tentative dates that we are anticipating. And then I just want to, then the last 2 that will be coming forward to City Council that you've taken action on is the Sunmore Model Home and the J. Cheney Wells residence in Smoke Tree, both of which we anticipate will go in tentatively in February. And then lastly, I want to just mention those sites that have been recommended by the board, which have been forwarded up to the City Council level and have taken action and been designated. Those include the Avery Field Cabin Ruins, the Bishop House, the Steve McQueen residence, and the O'Donnell Golf Course. Those have all been recommended from this board to the City Council, and the City Council has moved forward with their designation. So I think the board has had a great deal of work that has processed this particular fiscal year, and I think it should be proud of its actions and the work that you've done. And again, I conclude my set of staff comments and answer any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I think that is. There are 12 that are in various states, either have been designated this calendar year or are in the process of being designated. So pretty full plate. And I think there's other things in the hopper coming down the pipeline. So, any other staff comments? No, that's it. I think this is probably the shortest meeting that I've ever experienced in my history. And so maybe that's a thank you to Mr. Lavoy.
Certainly.
Exactly. So officially, the Historic Site Preservation Board will adjourn its regular scheduled meeting on Tuesday, January 14th, 2020 at 9 a.m. in the large conference room at City Hall. I wish everyone a very happy holiday. Thank you. Stay well.